Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Rama Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Jayam Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa, Parivrajacharya, Ashtotara Satashli A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada ki. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada's incorporation of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness ki jai. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki. Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki. Shri Shri Radha Govinda Madhava ki. Go Premanande! All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nevasesha Sunyavadi Pastyachare Shatarine. Hare Krishna. So, before we start, French translation. Someone can ask in French, please. Who needs a French translation? Our young Vaishnav here definitely needs a French translation. Very wonderful devotee. Language? Russian? English, okay? Okay. Anyone else, please ask in French. Does anyone else besides Mice need a French translation?
S'il y a quelqu'un qui a besoin d'une traduction en français.
You need. The young boy next to you needs French translation.
Russian translation or German?
Which language?
Russian or German?
Russian. Well, you may have to explain it to him. So somebody can translate into French for Mice, please, if it's only one or two. You do? Okay, sit together with Nitai. Nitai, Shamsundar Prabhu is with us today. Where's your good wife? Is she here?
She's in the wings somewhere.
In the
Wings somewhere.
in the wind. She's in the wind. There's not much wind this morning.
Wings.
Wind?
Wings.
Wings. She's flying around somewhere. She's walking around, is she? Flying around here. There's lots of trees to fly around, you know. You can. Well, Nitai Charan Prabhu is devotee here, is one of the devotees looking after our cows, bulls, calves, different things. And Shamsundar Prabhu, I don't know if you have a title anymore. He was the minister of cow protection, right?
I'm helping Krishna Chaitanya Maharaj with the European dairy plans.
Dairy plan. Okay. So that's what to say. One of Srila Prabhupada's great desires that we have, for many reasons, spiritual as well as practical. Cows are so dear to Krishna. Who is more dear to Krishna than his cows? Huh? And the land, cows, bulls, land, they all go together. Human society is all connected. And spiritual life. Without pleasing Krishna, how can we expect to make spiritual advancement? Anyway, I'll just mention one quick thing, but then we'll go on to today's subject, okay? On the last visit of Srila Prabhupada to London, in end of August 1977, we were driving Prabhupada from the airport to the manor. At that time, book distribution was probably at its peak. Maybe in India now, so many books, but as far as the movement was concerned, ISKCON, all over the world, India was not included then, hardly very small in India then compared to today, but all the Western countries were on a non-stop book marathon for 6 months. I think you were coming in at that time, Sham, weren't you? Just after. You just came in just after that era. From basically April through to December, that's more than 6 months, that maybe 8 or 9, non-stop book marathon. And it wasn't like we wanted to do it. It wasn't like we wanted to get out there. Why? We wanted to please Prabhupada. Prabhupada's health physically was deteriorating, and we felt this was not only what Prabhupada wanted, but this way Srila Prabhupada would stay with us forever. And of course he does. But we were on a book marathon like anything, and I was right in the middle of it in the UK. And in a big competition with France and and America and Germany and here in Australia and so on. Up and down. So when Prabhupada arrived, I thought Srila Prabhupada would ask if he said anything in the car. If he said Tamal Krishna Maharaj was there. And I thought if he said anything, I'll ask about book distribution. We were making more devotees than any other temple in the world. We had Danavir, Now Swami there with us. Back to program. Every month 4 new devotees on Sankirtan. What to speak of bhaktas. An average of 5 to 6 to 7 every month, new devotees joining. It was incredible. I mean, in one sense, it should be 5,000. But I mean, it was incredible, relatively speaking. And Prabhupada didn't say much in the car, as you can imagine. His health was very diminished, materially speaking. And but he did speak a few words through Tamal Krishna, who was sitting with him. Well, actually, Tamal was sitting next to me. I was nervous, as you can imagine. And Prabhupada asked him, whispered in his ear, then he told me, Srila Prabhupada wants to know all about the cows, he said. How many cows do you have at the manor? Who's looking after them? How much milk are they giving? How are they being cared for? Nothing other than the cows. He just asked questions about the cows. About 10 minutes on the journey. It was quite embarrassing because I knew nothing about the cows. I knew there were some cows in the field, and that's all I knew. We never went there, They were like in the field for the Indians or something, Anyway, kind of a wake-up call about how important this was to Srila Prabhupada. So today is also a very important day in terms of its date. It is the anniversary, is that right? The anniversary of the incorporation of ISKCON today. ISKCON, for those who don't know, most of you know, but some may not, International Society for Krishna Consciousness. ISKCON is the short. Prabhupada said, we shall call our society ISKCON. And he laughed. So we're going to hear a little bit about that today. Please forgive us. We're not going to be going to the Srimad Bhagavatam. There's no time to cover that as well as this subject. And this morning I spent a little time going through notes and diaries, etc., to put some chronology, you could say, to the historic. Can someone take this book, please? Thank you, Paul. At the time, we're going back now to, this is dangerous, 1966. Let go. When many of us in this room were not in your body. 1966. Come on, mathematicians. How many years ago was that? It's quite easy. It takes half a second to work out. Get your computers out quickly and calculate it. Isn't it amazing? Nowadays, people hardly can manage any equation or calculation in their minds. Are we okay out there? What's happening?
I think they don't know there is a 5 under the
Okay, quickly. Someone has to go. Quickly. Super duper French-speaking person, quickly. Quick as a flash, otherwise we're going to have a bash. And
He's off with the diggers.
huh?
He's off the digger.
Go quick. Yeah. Someone's got to know where the pipes are. They're repairing the drainage. What's happened is all the pipes are broken, and when the rainwater comes down, it just ruins the foundations of the building, basically. So it's a necessary, I believe, a necessary thing to do before we fix up the gutters and the downpipes and the rest of the roof, to make the building safer and waterproof, and use the water, recycle the water. It's all part of the plan. You'll hear about it if you haven't already heard about it. So, diaries. You may have read the Prabhupada Lilamrita. How many of you have read the Srila Prabhupada Lila Amrita? A fair few. And some of you may have read some of it or haven't read it at all. It is an account by Satsvarup Das Goswami of a brief account of Srila Prabhupada's unlimited services, teachings, legacy, etc. to the world. Something that's yet to be realized by the world in general. The greatest contribution in many ways in this age of anyone, practically speaking, Lord Chaitanya, aside from the Lord himself. And there are, unbeknown to Satsvarup Das Goswami and his team of researchers, there is a diary. It's not the Jaladuta diary either. That was known. There's another diary. It doesn't have a name. It's now named The Beginning. It didn't have a name. Probably didn't write the beginning on the diary. It was a day-to-day, almost a day-to-day diary which Srila Prabhupada kept when he arrived in America. This diary goes through to September 1966. Although there are hardly any entries in the diary from June to September, it goes up to June primarily. And there's only one or two after that. Because after that there were followers. There was records, remembrances of devotees which have filled in those gaps. Now, before June, there wasn't much, let's say, documentation of what Srila Prabhupada was doing. There was some. Letters were there. Some recordings were there. Some memories were there. But Prabhupada kept a daily record, more, not every day, but almost every day record. It's a fascinating diary called The Beginning. You can find it on the database. It's been placed there. This book was being kept by one of Srila Prabhupada's early secretaries. I'm knowing a little bit. I won't go into that or give his name in case you feel bad about him. But he kept this diary, unknown to others, for decades. Maybe in the 90s, thereabouts, or even later, he revealed this diary, handwritten diary of Srila Prabhupada. Handwritten. So the Lilamrita did not have that as a reference point. So you find many things which are not complete or even not correct in the Lilamrita. As far as Srila Prabhupada's early, year or 9 months or whatever it was in America. Most of it's correct, you could say, from as far as we know, but many things are in that diary which are not known. His relationship with Sali Agarwal, they're known now, but they didn't know then. And the interaction with Sali Agarwal, so many fascinating things. And Prabhupada's endeavors even to go back to India during that time, and going to the West Coast, and all sorts of things. Prabhupada was facing so many challenges. So we're not going to go there. We're going to take it up now. This unknown to the world incorporation of ISKCON. Who cared about it? Even there were no initiated devotees at that time. There were some interested people. They were just a little interested, fascinated. What's the Swami doing? Huh? It's far out. We have a Swami living here in the east side of New York. Huh? It goes along with the hippies. It's kind of far out, right? Indian. Something mystical. Of course, there are other people who are interested. Some elderly ladies in they call uptown New York, interested in theosophy or some kind of yoga of some kind. So he was also a little fascinating to them, but they weren't really serious. But when Prabhupada was in the east side, he moved down to the lower part of New York or Manhattan, to the Bowery, then people became young people became a little, mostly hippies. But we're going to go back even further. to the 3rd of February 1966. And this is where we will begin. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namini Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Prachadine Nirvasesha Sunyavadi Paschachade Shatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. What's the next mantra? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada's ISKCON Society ki jai. Go Premanande. February the 3rd. This is just a little forerunner. Prabhupada is basically alone. He's staying in an apartment, a little office actually. Well, he's in between right now. Between Dr. Mishra's apartment and a little office room in what's called Uptown, Manhattan. Dr. Mishra is a yoga teacher. And Prabhupada had his contact, and he kindly gave Prabhupada some facility to stay there in New York. He had a big part to play. Dr. Mishra was a Mayavadi, but he helped Prabhupada establish ISKCON. So, very special. Can you imagine what good fortune? Anyway, Prabhupada was there, and basically, many times he would be, when he was in this little office room, it wasn't even a living room, it was an office room. It had no bathroom or kitchen. No, not even a chair practically. He was sitting on the floor with his trunk as his table. And he was translating and receiving people and trying to find out what is New York. How does New York tick, as they say? Huh? What are the habits of the people? You know, what do they do? How does it work? What are they interested in? Learning a little bit about the culture of New York, if you want to call it a culture. So, anyway, some people were coming. They were mostly students of Dr. Mishra or some other friends, but very, very few people. And many times Prabhupada would speak on his own. He would give sometimes talks a few evenings a week, and sometimes he'd be alone. We'll hear that in a minute. This is February the 3rd. So this is just a little bit of an introduction. It is all grace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is almost all from this diary, by the way. Entries in the diary, word by word. Srila Haridas Thakur said that the transcendental sound of Harinam would even purify the heart of birds and beasts. Today, this statement of Haridas Thakur is corroborated. It's evidence, it's shown, it's proven today. Today, these Americans cannot understand even a word's meaning of the Sankirtan. And yet they were so much attracted. He'd been going sometimes to the ashram, it's called the Ananda Ashram of Dr. Mishra in the countryside. And he saw that the students who were coming there were very attracted to the chanting. They didn't understand a word of the philosophy, but the chanting they liked. It is all Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's power. There is no credit for me. That's the mood of Prabhupada. If you read his poem Markine Bhagavat Dharma, you can see his mood and spirit. That poem, to me, it is like the mission statement of ISKCON. We write many mission statements. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to take over the world, or whatever things you write. Mission statement. I'm going to chant 64 rounds a day from now on. Right? I'm going to follow strictly all the principles. I'm going to go on Sankirtan at least once a week and distribute books. And I'm going to attend the morning. We write our mission statements. We all know it doesn't happen. And ISKCON, we have our mission statements sometimes. It's a good idea. You've got to have some plan. But there's got to be a foundation there. What is the use? We're going to build a 100-story building, but no foundation. What's the use? Markandeya Bhagavat Dharma is the foundation of our movement. Prabhupada's first words in America, written word. So important to understand the principle of Krishna consciousness, the mood, the spirit, not just the action, not just we're do this, we're going to do that, we're this, do, but the spirit. The spirit is what counts. And that's the essence, that's the foundation, that absolute dependence, as Prabhupada said, there is no credit for me. It is all Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's power, or we could say mercy. We'll move on. So Prabhupada still, this is 20th of February. Prabhupada's alone. He was actually alone this day. And someone has given him a tape recorder. One of those ones, those big ones with things that go round and round, reel-to-reel tape recorder. And Prabhupada's recording. Even if no one's there, he said, we will preach to the four walls. We don't mind. Even if no one's there, we will preach to the four walls. We're willing to go to hell. We'll preach to the moon, the sun, anything. He was there to preach. He wasn't there for any other reason. So he's preaching. And he decided he was going to redo his Bhagavad Gita, which of course had been stolen in America. He was rewriting, he'd redone it already. So now was the time for the introduction. So he recorded what we have now in the Bhagavad Gita, the introduction, to an empty room. He recorded it. And now it's being read and heard by millions of people. That was on February the 20th, Sunday. Prabhupada did that. He writes in his diary, Introduction to Gita Upanishad, recorded 2 sides, 3 hours. Prabhupada writes. And the next entry, which is related to today, there are other entries. Prabhupada was another thing he taught us, which I was taught also, where he recorded every single cent of income and every single cent of expenditure. And sometimes it is literally 1 cent recorded in his diary. You can read. February 23rd, he notes, International Institute of God Consciousness. That's what he was referring to at that point of time. See, this was not known in the Lilamrita. Prabhupada was originally calling it God Consciousness, not Krishna Consciousness. That came a little later. There's no mention of exactly what was his thoughts, but he'd come up with this idea, and he decided that there were a few, he called them floating members. Floating. They're one day there, one day gone. It's still a bit like that sometimes. You have a lot of floating devotees. Our mind is floating. We're all floating. Our mind sometimes goes out there somewhere. And we're also floating sometimes. Flirting with the material world. Floating with Krishna. So he wrote an International Institute, not even Society, International Institute of God Consciousness. Today signed. He had some of the floating members sign the paper for the International Society for the International Institute for God Consciousness. Floating members signed. Doesn't say who they were, just some floating members. Just trying to work out. Because way back in 1953, Prabhupada, when he was in India, in Jhansi, he had formed what was called the League of Devotees. And that's documented. And he's now thinking in terms of America with the same principle of forming a league or as an institute or something or another relevant to America. So this is the first, I've seen, the first direct indication of this in his writings in America anyway.
Is there a significant difference of meaning between league, institute, and society? I mean,
well, yeah, when it could be. I mean, we can, English language, of course, you can interpret them differently. I don't know if Prabhupada was thinking differently in terms of what it meant, exactly, or whether this is more relevant to the situation of America, an institute. Institutes at those days were very common in the West. It was very common. I remember when I was at that time, I was a member of an institute. It was a very common thing. I don't know if it's still a common thing in the West, institute. They changed the meaning. I mean, league definitely isn't something which is, other than a football league, the word league was not used very often in terms of describing a group of people with a common, purpose. Institute was. Society was also. But institute was very, especially where Prabhupada was. He was with this group of people who were very older, and institute was a big word. I remember, the Railway Institute. We had this whole big thing. My father worked in the railways. And so we used to go to the Railway Institute for everything. Drinking, parties, sport, everything went around the Railway Institute. It was a huge building, which was called the Railway Institute. It was very common in those days. That was the mid-60s.
is it more like education?
No, it was more in terms of common, something in common. You come together there and share it. Whether it was drinking, philosophy, sport, recreation, playing cards, whatever it was, meeting people with a similar, purpose. Institute. But I don't know if there's a fine line. Society, I suppose, is much broader. I think society is much bigger. We say society to use a general term. In human society, you don't usually say human institute. Institute's like a specific aspect. At that time, probably used the word institute. Maybe he wasn't completely aware. I don't know of the English usage of these words. I have no idea. But
society doesn't refer to like administrative thing,
not necessarily.
Legal terms, like human society.
Yeah, it's very broad. It's a general term, isn't it? French society, you don't, whether you're this or that, you're a member of the French society, but you may not be a member of the particular institute. It's more specific, I would say, in terms of it's more restricted. So Prabhupada was opening up, and we'll see how much he was opening it up when we come to the next stage. It's fascinating. March the 6th, according to Mayapur Panchika, today is Adivas Day of Gopurnim. That means the day before Lord Chaitanya's appearance. Devotees at Vrindavan and Navadvip are enjoying the celebration. I am here alone without any devotee companion, but I have come here to serve the Lord and not for personal happiness. I am prepared to live in hell, even if I am able to serve the Lord. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted that his mission should be propagated all over the world, and that is my objective. I do not mind the inconvenience personally felt. Prabhupada's spirit. The purpose of establishing, Prabhupada going on here, the date, I don't, okay. Now we're coming to Prabhupada's The date may come at the end. I don't have it in the front here. The purpose of establishing an association like League of Devotees on the wish of Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa 108 Sri Srimat Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj and Thakur Bhakti Vinod of Navadvip is keenly felt a necessary enterprise on the face of the present world situation, with special reference to the degraded and distressed condition of the human being. Quite an old worldly English statement. That was not actually in New York. This is the Prabhupada's introduction to the League of Devotees. Now, I'm not going to go into it. The League of Devotees document is quite long, and we don't have much time. But this is 1953, and I'll just mention one or two of the purposes, which are a little interesting. They're all interesting, but we don't hear about these much. Just two or three. And they're not in any particular order. To undertake civic enterprises which do not come in conflict with the ideals and missions of the League, with all the principles in view. Civic enterprises. Something we don't usually incorporate. Some devotees are negative towards this aspect, but that was there in the League of Devotees document. It means activities which don't conflict. In other words, things like food for life, charitable, you could see it from a charitable point of view, it's civic. What are you doing for the people? Something civic, you know. Prabhupada had that in his League of Devotees. To open free mail services, to advise by post in respect of inquiries made to the League on spiritual subjects. Interesting. Mail order, free. Prabhupada said free here. To evoke the quality of goodness, particularly in every member of the League, individually, by the process of spiritual initiation. Prabhupada wanted Brahmins, mode of goodness. They would be the head to guide society. Most people are not expected to be in that category. There needs to be Brahmins to give that guidance, otherwise everything becomes your opinion and my opinion, and we fight. By establishing him in the status of qualified Brahmin, good and intellectual man on the basis of truthfulness, forgiveness, equality, tolerance, education, purity, knowledge. Anyway, Prabhupada goes on with details. Prabhupada's English far right. Every pi paid to this institution is engaged in transcendental service of Godhead. Every pi. So if you make a pi, is this a spelling mistake in Prabhupada's handwriting? It means every pice. Pice means, you don't know what a pice is. Tell us what a pice is.
Like we have pennies here.
Yeah.
Cents, we have the paisa.
Paisa in India, every paisa. Yeah, they don't hardly use it now. It's like they'll throw it at you if you give them a paisa. It used to be Anna. Every pice paid to this institution, Prabhupada said, should be engaged. Anyway, it's just a little funny. There's a long document. I'm going to jump over it. Prabhupada said they're not man-made ideologies at all. These are the plans of the rishis. These are the plans of the rishis and the acharyas, Prabhupada's writing. But people don't know. It's recorded in Sanskrit. That's another interesting thing. You'll see that Prabhupada wanted to have a Sanskrit academy at that time. Fascinating. And he brings it up too. It's not there in the incorporation there, but it is in the document that Prabhupada gave to the lawyer, the importance of Sanskrit. The incorporation document is a reduction of the paper Prabhupada gave to him. It's not the complete thing. Prabhupada saw through Sanskrit it would create and it does. It creates a purification of consciousness, just the sound of Sanskrit. What's the heck the point of us chanting these mantras every morning? What's the point? Waste of time. Huh? Oh, I enjoy it. Everyone can hear my loud voice. Shri Bhagavan Vacha! Dehe no smen yata dehe. Listen to me. We may enjoy it as poetic or something, but otherwise, what do we know, you know? But it actually, the right consciousness, it purifies our consciousness. February the 23rd, 1966. Ladies and gentlemen, I beg to inform you, so there's a few people there, probably ladies and gentlemen, some old elder people. I beg to inform you that the classes which I am holding now may be called the initiation classes for developing the International Institution for God Consciousness. Probably uses it again. The initiation classes, to bring people to initiation. He enrolls 7 of the people who are attending his classes. One of these is Harvey Cohen. And it was Harvey Cohen had a big part. You don't know him. He got initiated later on. His name became Haridas. He was the first one to go to San Francisco and invite Mukunda to come to establish the temple. And he was the one who introduced Bill Epstein and all these other people before all the ones you know about. These were the real early birds who really got things moving. And he was the one who also introduced Prabhupada, we call Paul, this boy, that's not actually his name, but Paul, the boy who had this apartment, this loft in the Bowery. Through Harvey Cohen, all this happened. And he introduced him to many people. So he introduced him to Paul Mary and another young man. Many people. He was a very well-known person, this Harvey Cohen, in the underworld of New York. March the 30th. Today, one letter received from the Rockefeller. Have you ever heard of Rockefeller? Is he a rock musician or something? A Rockefeller? Who's Rockefeller? A rich man. One of the richest on the planet, right? The whole family, they're famous. There's like half a dozen families, and they're one of them who are supposed to be behind everything, the Rockefeller family, huh? I guess they're from Jewish descent also, I guess, I don't know. Anyway, Prabhupada had written to his foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, asking for help. Prabhupada was writing all over the place. He was writing to everyone and everyone, even to the Salvation Army. Everyone who was writing to anyone's name he got, can you help? I want to do this, this, or this, you know. And always negative. He was even asking the Prime Minister of India, I think was in America, please arrange a personal meeting with the President of America. He was, there was no limits, you know. Prabhupada was really, really serious, you know. He wasn't just there to walk around the street and meet a couple of people now and again and give a book here and there. He was thinking big time even then, you know. I want to meet the President of America, you know. Please arrange this. Of course, it all didn't work, but I mean, that was Prabhupada's mood, you know. Today, one letter received from Rockefeller Foundation denying any help for starting the International Institution for God Consciousness. So you see how many times Prabhupada is using this term? At that time. Unknown in the Lilamrita. Now we're going on. This is a little bit on. There's no date given to this. It's not in the book exactly. This must be a memory of this person called Carl Jurgens. Carl Jurgens. He was a black man, but he also a friend of Harvey Cohen, and he also introduced to Prabhupada, and he became also one of the most instrumental persons in the early days of ISKCON, or of this movement, so to speak. There was no ISKCON. Carl Jurgens had already had some experience in forming a religious organization. He was a young man interested in spirituality and a little bit more together than most of the hippies, you could say. He was a little more older, and he had some experience in forming a religious organization. I don't know what, but it says that. And when he had met Prabhupada on the Bowery, he had agreed to help. Because Prabhupada moved from uptown New York, down to the Bowery. Harvey Cohen had arranged this through Paul Murray that he could stay in this loft in the Bowery, which is the most degraded part, practically in those days anyway, of New York. It's where all what they call the bums. You know what bums are? I don't mean fit the physical body aspect. but in terms of their social position. What's a bum? Bum. Who knows what a bum is? You heard this term, some you may not, you think, funny term. What does it mean in America? Huh? Like, yeah, social persons who are just, in England we call them tramps. They just live on the street. They have no home. They just bum around. They come up to you, bum, give me a dime. Give me a dime. Yeah. They never bathe. They drink wine. They just hang out. You see them in Paris, all along Rivoli. You go along the Rivoli, those plush street in especially in the winter in Paris, practically. Over every one of these outlets on the street, they have these like grills where coming up from the subway, I guess, the heat's coming up. They're all lying there on top of these grills, all the way along the road. It's bizarre. Hey, give me a dime, give me a dime, give me a euro, come on! Bums, they usually drink, they just hang around. Rejects, whatever. So Prabhupada was staying on the Bowery, and Carl agreed to help Prabhupada. And this Carl, he knew a lawyer, believe it or not. He knew a young lawyer. So he contacted his lawyer, who was a young Jewish man named Stephen Goldsmith. A good name, huh? Goldsmith. Today, Mr. Carl has taken and then after a little while, there's nothing mentioned what happened in between. But somehow or another, Prabhupada started talking to Carl when he heard he knew a lawyer to try to get something in, official done. So Prabhupada gave Carl a copy of now changing a memorandum of association for consultation with the lawyer. What exactly that is, I don't know. Thursday, now jumping forward, there was nothing special in April. Thursday, 12th of May, Ashtami. Today I inquired about registration, again, probably going back and forth with terms, of the League of Devotees. He's still considering that's all that exists, because that exists. The League of Devotees still exists. Registration of the League of Devotees is understood, from that lawyer, that expenditure will be about $300, including $200 for the lawyer. Prabhupada writes in his diary. 25th of May. After the meeting, there was consultation about incorporation. Now, this the first mention of incorporation. This is the first mention. Incorporation of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. First time Prabhupada brings it. There's no mention of a meeting with devotees where Prabhupada said we will call it the Krishna Consciousness, nothing like that. This may have happened, but that's not mentioned in his diary. So that's May 25th. Prabhupada's in the Bowery. He's not in 2nd Avenue. He's in the Bowery. Prabhupada started the love feast, by the way, not in 2nd Avenue. He started it in the Bowery. It's written in his diary. First love feast. Bowery. Started many things there which are not known, or not, maybe they were known or not known, but maybe some of them not mentioned in the Lilamrita. Krishna consciousness, just a little note here. Krishna consciousness. Well, what do people know about that? Was Prabhupada's own rendering of a phrase from Srila Rupa Goswami's Padyavali, a book of Rupa, written in the 16th century. Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavita. Some of you know this saying. Krishna Rasa Bhakti Bhavita. Rasa Bhavita. To be absorbed in the mellow taste of executing devotional service to Krishna. So Prabhupada brought that down to simply Krishna consciousness. But to register ISKCON legally as a non-profit, tax-exempt religion required money and a lawyer. So that lawyer was Stephen Goldsmith. Mr. Goldsmith, on 30th of May, agreed to join the International Association for Krishna Consciousness. Prabhupada used another different word, association now. This lawyer agreed to join the association. Whatever that means. Mr. Goldsmith's lawyer came to see me in connection with society registration. I gave him my suggestions, 1st of June. It goes back a little while. It's not just, something that happened in 2nd Avenue in July. 16th of June, $100 withdrawn from bank for incorporation charges to be paid Mr. Goldsmith. This is the first official, you could say, commitment in this regards. 17th of June, Mr. Goldsmith hung, he said hanged, we usually say hung in English. Mr. Goldsmith hanged the notice on the door to be so remained for 15 days in terms of the law. That's a notice that, so whatever it was, the incorporation of this, association or society was in process. Because if anyone has an objection, then they can make their objection like that. It is expected that the incorporation will take place sometime after the 6th of July. Prabhupada is still in the Bowery. Friday, 1st of July. Today I entered the new house at 26 2nd Avenue, rear portion, room B1. For my purpose, it is all good. I do not know why Krishna is trying to establish me in New York. I am his servant, and therefore let his desire be fulfilled through my agency. Same mood as the first writing, huh? Markandeya Bhagavat. Right, that was July 1st. July 6th, in the meeting at 26 2nd Avenue, or 2nd Prabhupada calls it 2nd Street store, it is settled that the society shall be incorporated, and the name of the society shall be International Society for Krishna Consciousness. 11 trustees were agreed. It's just a meeting. Say you've all come here. Say all of you have been coming for 1 or 2 weeks. You not know much about Krishna consciousness. You've got long hair, jeans and t-shirts on, and maybe you're still suffering from an LSD trip from the night before, or you got your marijuana in your pocket or whatever it is. And there you are, sat in the room, and you hear this story, his famous story. Mr. Prabhupada just given a lecture. So now, Mr. Goldsmith, take the names. We're going to form, Mr. Goldsmith, Swamiji wants to form an international society for, sometimes this is a bit of a dramatic, God consciousness, and Prabhupada says, no, Krishna consciousness. God consciousness is not specific. Krishna is specific. God can mean anything, impersonal Brahman, all sorts of things. Krishna consciousness, he's a person. Krishna consciousness. Okay, so we're going to form this society. We need some names so it can be incorporated. So, yes, you could. Steve, you can sign, okay? Right. Okay. You sign. Okay. What was it? What's your first name? Logi? Huh? Lokesh, you can sign, huh? You sign. I don't know. So long I haven't called devotees by their original names, but I've forgotten. No, but there's Steve. Steve is here. Stuart. Okay, Stuart. Stuart. I can't remember all the original names. Stuart, you sign, okay? What was your name before you joined?
Christine.
Huh? Christine. Christine, she can sign. Prabhupada's pointing out. Christine, they didn't even read the document. There's a document there from the Lord. Just put your name at the bottom. Don't know what you're signing. 11 names. Prabhupada said 11. 11 was a big name, big number. Everything was 11. 11 first names on the Constitution, or whatever you call it. And 11 first disciples. So many 11s are there. So 11 names. 11 trustees were agreed. And they were like, whoever they were like that. Mukunda, this one, that one. Actually, Steve wasn't one of them. No, he came a little bit later. Carl and Ray and Jan and this one and that one. Yeah, all these ones. No, he wasn't there either. He maybe. I don't think he was one of these 11. He's a little different. He was in the first initiation. That was later. That was in September. This is back in July, beginning of July. They came a little bit later. They were not there then. Thursday, 7th of July. Today I saw Mr. Goldsmith in his office. The Prabhupada's writing. He has paid $10, whatever that means. The papers of the meeting were handed over to him from the night before. It is expected society shall be registered by the next week. He says everything's all right, because he had to have the signatures on the paper. He'd given the paper, the legal paper, to Prabhupada, or rather he came to the meeting. The paper was there at the meeting, and it was given back Prabhupada. Everything was signed and agreed, then given back to Mr. Goldsmith. So it'd take another week, more or less, for the final everything to be confirmed. So then, and the document was actually called the Constitution, at least in Prabhupada's writing, the Constitution of Association. And we don't have time to read it. It's a long document. I'm going to jump off of this and go to a brief summary of that. Which one is it? I think it's this one or the other one. That's the other one. We're almost there. Get off that page, go to this one. Okay, just a few things. Prabhupada was already calling the place in his constitution the Radha Krishna Temple in 2nd Avenue. Just a little footnote. And it's much akin to the incorporation document, but there are some differences. And here's some. To assist whenever and wherever possible in the building of a social structure on the real foundation of spiritual progress, is Prabhupada's wording. His objectives, amongst others, are to establish the 4 principles which the Goswamis had in view. They were given to them by Lord Chaitanya, those 4 principles. We don't have time to get into it. We have to ask later. To install wherever it's possible the worship and temple of Radha Krishna and that of Sri Chaitanya, and to give facility to everyone to become trained in the modes of archan, deity worship, or preparatory principles of devotional service. To organize educational programs such as classes and lecture tours, Prabhupada says. Go to tours. And to institute services such as mailing for the benefit of the members of society and humanity at large. To revive the scientific system of the social orders of classification based on intelligence, martial spirit, productivity, and common assistance, generally known as the 4 castes, with reference to quality and worth for the common cause of world society. To discharge as a matter of course, get rid of the vitiated system of supremacy of one man over another by false prestige of birthright or vested interest. Get rid of this caste mentality. And maybe one more here we'll read. To popularize the vegetable grain diet under approved methods in order that full value of protein, carbohydrate, fat, and vitamin benefit may be derived therefrom. That's in Prabhupada's, what he gave this to the lawyer. This is his document. That didn't come out in the incorporation, obviously. But this was Prabhupada's written document. And many other little things. And that was signed by Raymond Marais, who became Roy Ram, who was one of the first instrumental initiates. Michael Grant, who of course was Mukunda. Robert Lefkowitz, I think that was Ravinder Swarup, but not the Ravinder Swarup you know. Early disciple of Prabhupada's first initiate, Ravinder Swarup. He left after a few weeks. James Green, I think that was Janananda from Canadian descent, I think. And then you have the certificate of incorporation, which took place, and this is the day when we celebrate the official incorporation of ISKCON. That means it's official recognition, legal recognition. Well, Prabhupada had many things in mind. He foresaw a great association of the whole society covering the whole world. At that time, a few young boys and girls, hippies, sat there. Why does the Swami need a society? There's just a few of us sitting here in this little room in New York, enjoying kirtan, and he feeds us. What's all this about? You know? Prabhupada said, so that we can be free of tax. But there's no worry anyway. No one's giving any money. Where's the question of tax? We're now our managers, they just left to deal with Gandharvakas here. The big topic, isn't it? Huh? Incorporation, so you are free of tax. Prabhupada was foreseeing this, as you already heard, to establish a society which is tax-free religious society. It was one of the first things Prabhupada wanted, groundwork, to facilitate the growth of this movement. And we can see how difficult it is if you don't have that, which we don't have in this country, which we're trying to get. Prabhupada wanted that right from the beginning. It was easy then in America. Maybe it still is, I don't know. So that was the point. No one's giving anything. Why do you need to worry about that? There's no question of tax. But Prabhupada was seeing the future and how big a future it became. So let's just read the incorporation document. There are many other comments were made at that time. We, the document goes, we, the undersigned, for the purpose of forming a corporation pursuant to the religious corporation law of the state of New York, do hereby make, subscribe, and acknowledge this certificate as follows. First, the name of the corporation shall be International Society for Krishna Consciousness, Inc. That means incorporated. Second, that's the first thing, this legal document, signed and accepted by the state of New York. Second, the purposes for which the corporation is organized are, and this is what we're probably familiar with and certainly we hear about. 1, to systematically propagate spiritual knowledge to society at large and to educate all people in the techniques of spiritual life in order to check the imbalance of values in life and to achieve real unity and peace in the world. What an important statement. Huh? So powerful and important. You could discuss practically every word in this statement, practically.
Very actual.
Pardon?
Very actual.
Actual. Accurate. Completely accurate. To the point. Spot on. Systematic. It's not just teach. Systematically. You don't throw people in the deep end, which is what we often do. It's got to be systematic. You don't start with Bhakti Shastri or Bhakti Vaibhav or something. You start with the basic, systematic, according to where you are. Not according to where I am or where according to others are. Systematic. Just like modern education is supposed to be systematic to educate primary school all the way up to university. Systematic. It's an absolute requirement. Systematically propagate spiritual knowledge according to the people's ability to digest at large and to educate all people in the techniques of spiritual life in order to check. This will check. That means it will counter. It will stop the imbalance of values in life which people have. Such an imbalanced society. And that's why there's so much unrest in society. People are not properly situated in their occupation, in their ashram or whatever, their relationships and so on. So much imbalance there. And to achieve real unity. When we understand our position, unity can come. And naturally, peace, which Prabhupada wanted. 2, to propagate a consciousness of Krishna as it is revealed in the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna consciousness. 3, to bring the members of the society together with each other and nearer to Krishna, the prime entity, and thus to develop the idea within the members and humanity at large that each soul is part and parcel of the quality of God. Interested, Prabhupada uses the word quality of God. We sometimes say of God, but Prabhupada used the word here, quality of God. When you say of God, you'll start thinking you are God. But we're an expansion, it's the Lord's quality. 4, to teach and encourage the Sankirtan movement, congregational chanting of the holy name of God as revealed in the teachings of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. 5, to erect for the members and for society at large a holy place of transcendental pastimes dedicated to the personality of Krishna. 6, to bring the members closer together for the purpose of teaching a simpler and more natural way of life. All these are topics in of themselves, big topics. 7, these are the 7 which are in the incorporation document. With a view towards achieving the aforementioned purposes, those 6 purposes, the 7th is to publish and distribute periodicals, magazines, books, and other writings. So those are the 7. So we understand the view towards achieving is based upon the books, reading them, producing them, teaching them, distributing them, etc. And then there's a 3rd point, and it's quite wordy. Did we read it or not? It's too long. Oh no. There is a 4th one. We don't usually hear these. There's a 3rd one, and then there's a 4th one, and a 5th one, and a 6th one, and a 7th one, and an 8th one. They're all there in the incorporation document, aside from what we've just heard. They're mostly technical, like the operations of the corporation are to be conducted principally within the state of New York. The principal place of worship of the society is 26 2nd Avenue. The number of trustees of the society shall be 9, not 11. The names and addresses of the trustees until the first annual meeting of the corporation are as follows. These are the first trustees of ISKCON. Until we call it a general meeting, General Assembly here, General Assembly. So they had their first annual meeting, or their General Assembly. Until that first General Assembly, the trustees are as follows. Michael Grant, or Kunda Maharaj. Jan Osland, Janaki. James Green, Janananda, I think he was Janananda. These were the first 3 trustees of ISKCON. And the names and so on are given there where they live. And the next ones were Paul Gardner, whoever that was, can't remember who he became. These other ones we're not sure who they are. Donald Chapdelaine and Raymond Murray, that was Rairam for sure. They were the next ones. And the next ones were Carl Jurgens, Raphael, he was a famous one then, Raphael Belsom, and Robert Lefkowitz. So they were the 9 chosen trustees eventually. The ones. And then there's a 9th point. The first annual meeting for the annual election of trustees shall be held on... The interesting thing, this is what confuses me a little bit. The first annual meeting for the annual election of trustees shall be held on July... Oh, no, it's not. I misread it. July the 6th, 1967, at 7 p.m. 1 year in advance. And the 10th, on July the 6th, 1966, this is maybe a little confusing, at number 26 2nd Avenue in the city, county, and state of New York. The matters set forth in paragraphs 1st through 8 of this certificate were determined, okay, this is clear, at a meeting held for that purpose pursuant to the Section 192 of the Religious Corporation Law on July 6, 1966, at number 26 2nd Avenue. The said meeting was held pursuant to due written notice. Anyway, this just goes on to confirm what we just read. On July the 6th, everything was confirmed, and on July the 13th, it became accepted by the state of New York. And then there's an 11th point, something to do with religion. And the final thing, witnesses to this document were there, signed Prabhupada. And the witnesses to the final document were signed by Raymond Murray, Roy Ram, and Carol Becker. She was the wife of Carl Jurgens. One of these devotees you've never seen, heard of, and may never see. They just disappeared into the wind. I hope your wife hasn't disappeared into the trees or the wind or whatever it is. Jai. That was it. The incorporation is complete. And so those little humble beginnings, which seem like a big affair, as far as legalities are concerned, hundreds, thousands now, thousands of centers are there all over the world.
How many?
Including preaching centers, thousands.
Exactly.
I don't know. I don't know if there is a list of preaching centers. There's about 800 official temples, isn't it? Right now, I think, official temples. But thousands of preaching centers. I remember listening to Anuttama saying on the stage in Mayapur a few years ago that he knows at least 2,000 or 3,000 Hare Krishna, ISKCON Hare Krishna centers around the world, which are not registered as ISKCON. So those ones are registered as ISKCON. But there are many which are not registered as ISKCON. Thousands of them. But they're ISKCON devotees preaching here and there for various reasons. So all over the world there's so many. I don't know if there still are 700 or 800 Rath Yatras every year around the world in ISKCON. Many things going on which you couldn't have believed. And as you know, during this whole episode of the incorporation of ISKCON, prior to maybe in the spring or something, or early part of the year, Prabhupada was sitting on a bench in a park in New York, talking to that subway man, man from the subway, who was asking him, "Are you from India?" And Prabhupada said, "Yes." And Prabhupada said, "Are you from India?" He said, "No." He was an American man. And he said, "What, have you got some kind of temple here? Or what?" And Prabhupada said, "Yes." There was nothing. Prabhupada was alone. He said, "Yes, we have many temples, we have many followers, we have farms, restaurants, so many things." He didn't even have a place of his own. He was going from place to place, you know. Didn't have a penny hardly to his name. He said, "Yes, we have many." There was just a little time separation, that's all. Just a little time separation. Everything comes in time. We endeavor, but ultimately, Krishna's in control. Prabhupada writes, he speaks and writes, he said, "I did not think that these American people would be able to take up this Krishna consciousness." He said, "When I arrived in Boston, I never thought it was possible." Prabhupada's writing and speaking like this. How will they react when I tell them, no meat eating, no intoxicant, no gambling, no illicit sex? And when I explain to them what that means, what will they say? And he writes, he said, we spoke, "Swami, go home." In other words, get out of here. Get lost. Get lost. People tell you that sometimes. And Prabhupada quotes his godbrother who was preaching in England when he went to Lord Zetland. Lord Zetland said, "Swamiji, can you make me a Brahmin?" "Oh yes, we can make you a Brahmin. What do I have to do?" "You have to give up intoxicants, illicit sex, gambling and meat eating." And what did he say? Impossible! Impossible! And I've met many people on the street when if they know or find out, they say, "I'd rather die than follow what you do." I've met people quite often like that on the street. "I'd rather die than do that." There's nothing left in life. No intoxicants, No gambling, no this, no that, no meat eating, no illicit sex. I'd rather die. Imagine how revolutionary Prabhupada is. No one else did this. No other Swamis went there with such a, an agenda. Right? They told Prabhupada, you have to adopt Western habits, wear Western clothes, drink tea, coffee, this, that, the other, Prabhupada, no. He never compromised his ways.
Eat with fork and knife.
Pardon?
You have to say
Yeah, eat with a fork and knife, eat at a table with a fork and knife. All these things. Cup of tea. China, in English, we have China cups, You drink your tea. Everything's got to be in order. D. No. He revolution. Revolutionized just about everything. We were familiar. Even revolutionized how you go to toilet, what to speak of anything else. Huh? Quite a revolution. Who could have imagined? Who could have imagined the world was totally in the dark? They didn't even know he existed. Even the next door neighbor wished he didn't exist. They were pouring boiling water through the floorboards to try to stop Prabhupada doing what he was doing. That's what Prabhupada was obviously given the vision by the Lord himself. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada's International Society for Krishna Consciousness ki jai. Go Premanandi. So maybe now you realize why. Maybe it's quite important that I stay in ISKCON. There'd be nothing in the world if Prabhupada hadn't done this. Nothing in terms of Krishna consciousness around the world. Nothing. There'll be a few nice devotees sitting in their temples in India ringing the bells, asking a few donations so they could have enough chapatis to survive. That would be about it. Or sitting around, as one of the disciples of Puri Maharaj said in public, he said this in public. He said, whilst the rest of the members were disciples of Srila Prabhupada, meaning Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, were sitting around talking about Vedanta, Swami Maharaj was doing what Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, actually wanted. He was preaching around the world and attacking sense gratification and science. Everyone else, he said, this is one of the members of the Gaudiya Math said this in Vrindavan, in the temple room, in public. All the other disciples were sitting around talking about Vedanta. How on earth is that going to help anyone else in the world? Don't even understand it yourself. Now, this is the secret to take up the mission of Srila Prabhupada. The spirit of the mission. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, go Premanandi. Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Well, if you have, did they welcome you this morning, Sham? They did, okay. Good. What is your wife's name? Lalita Sakya, that's right. Lalita Sakya, I remember now. You were with me in Scotland for a few weeks, weren't you? Yeah, we drove down to the manor, right? That night trip down to the manor in the Volvo. I think you were one of the ones in the car. Took 7 devotees down when Jai Tirtha left. We drove through the night.
No, I came just after Jai Tirtha.
You didn't. You were not in the temple when Jai Tirtha left. You never saw
I
him.
joined just after. I was kind of in the congregation.
You were congregation.
I wasn't actually that enjoyed.
You were going to the Scottish temple? You were living in Scotland then or not?
Yeah, I had to visit there. I think I met you when you were town president there.
Yeah, well, I was looking after the temple for a few months in Danavir's absence.
Yeah.
And that's when...
I visited there once.
that's when Jai Tirtha left during that period when I was there. I was in both Newcastle and Scotland at that time. And I drove all the full-time devotees, except for 1 or 2, down to the manor during the night without telling them why.
No, that wasn't.
There was them all crowded in the car. Yeah. That was quite a saga, my God. And we had Sarvabhauma, who was Jai Tirtha's fanatic henchman. One of them was there, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, do you remember? And he was there and he knew what was going on. He kept trying to bring it up, I was like, there was such a battle going on behind the scenes. And he unfortunately couldn't take everyone, and he captured the other two. But they were like fanatics, so I thought they're going to go anyway. So I just took those. I thought mostly the ones from Newcastle were with me anyway. 5 from Newcastle, and maybe 1 from Scotland. That was quite a saga, my God. Oh, could write a book about that. Write a book about it. So many things are not spoken, you know.
I'm so glad you did that research, Maharaj.
Huh?
Thank you for doing that research.
It's there. I just try to put it a little bit in chronological order, a little bit. Not finished yet. Not quite
Thank you.
finished. Yeah, it's nice to see it in chronological order a little bit, you know. Yeah. What to do? Struggles. Okay, Hare Krishna.